Hey guys, so today we are going to tab set our little dinosaur friend today. I already cut him in half during class, so you won't be able to see that on this portion, but he's ready to get set. He's got a bunch of lines on him. Sorry friend. So first we're going to start out with a little drawing. So I love the idea of having a little leaf shape for my little dinosaur, a little herbivore. So I kind of started out with the very generic leaf shape. I've got his body traced out, and then I'm actually going to put in some tabs on the sides. Now I am being mindful. I don't necessarily, for my design, need for my tabs to be totally equal, but I am trying to be mindful because when these tabs roll out, it's going to create a flat spot right here. So I want to make sure it's not super tight, otherwise it's not going to open up. And then I think it would be fun if I did a little bit of texture stamping on it, and then the bail I'm actually going to form with the stem of the leaf. So I've got my self-healing mat. I'm not going to cut out the whole thing perfectly. I just want to remove as much paper as possible. And I am going to do a quick eyeball test. It would be a good idea for you guys to kind of cut this out of paper and make sure everything fits right. But I think this should be okay for the amount of bail there is, because I still want there to be some stem left visually. So longer is better. And then I've got my copper. Now at this point I would highly recommend the top layer being the 20 gauge copper, which is the one that you purchased from Eric. It was the large sheet that was 6x6, rather than the 18 gauge, because it'll be easier to kind of manipulate the tabs. If you don't have any more of that sheet metal left, that's totally fine. I'm using 18 gauge because that's all I have right now, so we'll see how difficult it's going to be. So remember, an even coat of the rubber cement on both the paper and the metal. I'm going to try and conserve as much as I can, so I'm going to smush it over to one side. The paper, I just file it right off. Ta-da! Okay. Could have gone a little closer, but that's okay. All right. And I'm just gonna rub the rest of that stuff off because it would drive me insane. My hand's like constantly sticking to it. Okay, and then we can start piercing. So I always go, unless this sheet is really large, I always start with piercing first, because I want to be able to handle the metal at this nice big size. I've got my steel block. I've got my center punch and my hammer, and I'm actually going to center punch so I'm actually going to leave this center section intact, and I'm actually going to drill the holes here. And then pop those up, drop my little dinosaur in, and then push them back down. All right, so let's see. Now when we center punch, remember you have to do it on your steel block, otherwise you will not have a nice divot. Now in theory, I do not need to drill this many holes. However, I really like the idea of these holes being part of the decorative element, because if I only had one hole on the line, it would look a little funny, because we're gonna see the holes since we only have so many different size drill bits. Okay, so I've got my beeswax, my drill bit. This is the thin one, so this is the number 60. And then I'm gonna start drilling these holes. Now, for the sake of my sanity and yours, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and use the flex shaft, which is almost like a dental tool, but it's called a flex shaft because the handpiece is here and it attaches to a flexible shaft which turns the handpiece, and it's attached to a motor that's like 3 feet away. So you don't feel like nearly any of the vibrations that you would from, you know, like a Dremel or something where the motor is directly attached to your hand. What's happening here? Brand new handpiece, so. Okay. So this is the chuck, and you basically just stick it in the hole and then the gears line up, right? So you can tighten it, and that tightens the jaws. There are 3 jaws that tighten and can open up as large as that, and get as small as completely closed. So you can grab onto a variety of things, such as this drill bit, or like this snap-on mandrel, lots of things. So I'm going to run it. There's a foot pedal on the ground, and then I'm just gonna make sure to hold the handpiece straight up at a 90-degree angle, right? Making sure to wear safety glasses. And I'm gonna go through and just drill the holes. If I can turn the angle so you guys can see a little bit better. Super awkward. Okay. So it's a lot faster, which is great, but the chance of you breaking a drill bit becomes much higher if I start wibbling it while the drill bit's going down, there's potential for breakage. You can see all these little bits coming off, and they're nice and long, which means that I'm applying a very consistent and the right amount of speed versus pressure. So it's a really good sign. So I'm pushing, I'm applying pressure down and then releasing, and that kind of cuts these little twirly bits of metal. So many holes. I don't know if you guys can hear the difference in the sound too. You can kind of hear it when I'm applying pressure versus not. Cool. Easy. See all the holes have gone through, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut those little scallops. For detailed, really kind of thin cuts like these, we really want to use the thinner saw blade. So the 3/0, that's the 3-0 is going to be the one that you want to go for. If you're all out of those, then the 2/0, the 2/0, the number 1 blade is going to be really, really thick. That's all you got, that's all you got. But so that nice musical note. Oops, duh, I always do that. Want to make sure to slide your, so I loosen the bottom. Other people like to do it from the top. I like to do it from the bottom because it makes sense to me when I put it all the way up, and then I can snug it up to the end and then not hold the metal, because I can't stand applying pressure to the handle with my chest, like my bone. It hurts a lot, so I just do it this way. So I've already used the beeswax to lube it up, so I'm not going to do it again. Okay, so I have to do 4 of these. Okay, so I've got my little cuts. You can totally peel this off if you want, but it keeps the metal protected, so I don't mind leaving it on. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut out the rest of the metal. Be a little bit more taut. So I'm actually strategically going to start on this side, because if I cut here, then this whole swath becomes less stable, which is not super ideal. I want as much stability while I cut as possible. actually gonna lower my chair right now because it was a little bit too high up. It was a little uncomfortable for me. Right now, my chest is basically right at the level of the bench pin, and that's kind of my comfort zone. I'm actually going to back it out and just do it from the other side because the piece ends here, so it's going to be easier for me than to turn and make that corner and then cut this way, because then I wouldn't have as much support or ease of holding the piece down. Sweet little leaf. And then I'm going to take my ring clamp. So this part's pretty fragile, right? Because it's such a thin cut. So I'm actually gonna make sure to snug it up against my bench pin, so I'm not applying so much pressure to it. That's pretty good. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna peel off the protective plastic. Probably could have done that earlier. Ta-da! So the file did quite a bit of work. I'll take my sanding stick and go to town. So I'm also taking this 320 and I'm just ever so slightly hitting the direct edge of the metal because there is a slight burr. You're not really visually giving it much of a bevel, but it is technically, just so it's knocking down that sharp edge. This is really annoying me, so I'm gonna go grab some acetone or some rubbing alcohol to remove it. But so far, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. Small pieces especially. This one's a little bit big, so I don't feel like I need to. But I can take a little bit of sandpaper or tape and just stick it on the thing, and then let me show you a little better. Basically, just like rub your piece onto your sandpaper, and if you had a big sheet, it makes life a whole lot easier. Yeah, don't forget your edge, guys. Edge looks clean, the faces look good. I'm gonna go ahead. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna match this up and make sure the front is the front and the back is the back. So I'm actually gonna take my Sharpie and I'm gonna put B for back on the back. Because it is so similar, I don't wanna screw it up because the dinosaur's body is not symmetrical. There is a potential of it not fitting properly. So I'm making kind of a conscious effort to not hit the tabs because it's already work hardened. I really want to try and avoid work hardening it anymore. So I'm just kind of giving everything else the treatment. And then I'm actually softening my blows as I go inward. So the outside is actually pretty heavy-handed, but the inside is getting lighter and softer. Now to keep things consistent, I did go all the way in the middle, but I was really, really gentle with all of my little guys in there. And then as you can see, the edge of my leaf is now rippled from hitting it with the hammer, which I kind of like. If you don't like it, then make sure you texture your piece before you cut it out. Or if you did it this way, then I can go back and file all that rippling out. So I've got my steel wire from my spool. Cut it. Now my piece, as you can see, is no longer sitting straight. You can apply a little bit more pressure. I'm just being careful because it's a steel hammer. I'm really just trying to kind of punch it back down. Because the harder you hit it, you're actually going to start to flatten the face of it, which you do not want to do. And then I'm actually going to take my steel wire. Right now I'm just hitting it a little bit so it's nice and flat. You can do that with the yellow mallet as well. And you could do it on your wooden block, right, to protect your desk. And so I'm looking at it. I actually want it to be slightly curved. So I'm going to curve it. Yeah, pretty happy with that. I'm actually going to tape it on so it doesn't shift while I'm hammering too much. So overlapping blows. Not too bad. Cool. Pretty exciting. Okay, now here's gonna be the interesting part. So I need to look for objects that are gonna help me poke out these little tabs. So another thing that I'm doing is I'm actually using just the end of the pliers and just really ever so slightly opening them up and torquing it. Now it is going to slightly deform the rest of your pendant. As you can see, I'm popping it out because this is the back, B for back. Okay, getting there. So in order to get the piece back down, we don't want to hit the prongs. So I'm actually going to use my little dowel and punch it down that way. Right? The dowel is non-marring. It's not going to hurt my metal. Once you can kind of get your pliers in there, that's gonna help out quite a bit as far as leverage. Now, if you try to grab it too early, you're gonna make horrible pinch marks all over your metals. So at this point, even though I can stick it in there, I'm gonna keep going at it the way that I have been. Now, if you think that you're not gonna have kind of the muscle strength for this, it would have been a lot easier if I didn't have this back plate still in there. And if it was just a big cutout hole, then I would have needed a second plate on the back so that the dinosaur doesn't fall out. And then from there you could rivet the two pieces together. So I can get a really sizable grip on that now. But see, you can see how it's making little marks. If it's right on the line, it's easier to blend in. Now if we had a torch and we could anneal all of this, it would be dead soft and like so much easier. Try different pliers if you think. Now, also if the tabs were a lot thinner and not as wide as these scallops, it would have also been easier. All things to consider. Phew. Okay, so now I need to go through and kind of punch everything back down. At this point, I can go through again with my ball peen. So close. Hey. Little spots that have nicks on them, I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean up a little bit. I actually don't mind what's happening with this kind of natural warble, so I'm going to leave it. But there are some little dings from the pliers. That I'm not really loving, so sand it out. And because the overall texture is pretty kind of even and consistent, I can kind of hit it with a little bit of 600 grit and you can't really tell. So I'm gonna do that. And another thing that you can do, if you wanted to, is you can thin out the little scallops. All right, so I did a little bit of filing and then I hit it with a little bit of sanding stick action. And then I'm gonna slide, just checking. Yeah, okay. So first I wanna form everything before I start fiddling around with my, setting my little dinosaur in place. I'm gonna take this. Now again, these steel tools are gonna mark up my metals, so a little trick is you can take your tape and protect your metal by wrapping your plier. I'm not going to wrap the other one because it's going to go in the inside, so I'm not too concerned with it. Here's my original guy. I'm just going to fiddle around with it and see what I like. idea of it going backwards. So that's it. Easy, easy peasy. Should just snuggle it up to the side. Actually from here. Now I'm wrapping it around my plier because I want to make sure to keep it round. Kind of okay with that. This was not my initial plan, but kind of like it. Okay, and then those little marks that I made, I'm gonna go back with my 600 grit and just knock it out. Give it a nice little set and finish. I'm gonna pop my little dinosaur back in. Now the dinosaurs are very forgiving because it is gummy. You're not gonna have that same forgiveness with a stone cabochon, so just be mindful of that. Now, I do not like all of these little hammer marks that were left, so I'm gonna sand it out. I'm gonna slide my little dinosaur back in, and then I'm gonna take my little pliers. Now, if his little feet weren't there, I would go through and I would actually use these. Ooh, I wonder if this is possible. Ooh, okay. So then I would go through and I would pinch the opposite ones at the same time. I'm gonna use a little bit of tape. I'm really trying to be mindful of pushing the top of the scalloped prong down more than the base, right? So I'm really focusing the pressure kind of on the top. Rather than down there, right? If, let's say, this is your oversized cabochon, you've got your metal and it's basically if it's up straight like this, you want to push your metal down so it's holding onto your cab or your tapered little central piece. Okay. So yeah, that's it. there's my little guy. Woohoo! And then I don't need a back piece. Again, this one was much more difficult just because we really couldn't anneal it and soften it and make it more pliable by heating it up. So just be mindful of that. If you guys have a hard time moving things and your hand strength isn't really high, then I would do a slightly modified design. There's so many that we can do, and I'll throw some images of what you can do outside of this, but you know, and then I can run, you know, my chain or leather through this and wear it as a pendant. Or you could throw a fibula on there and wear as a little brooch. Woohoo! Thanks, guys.